welcome everybody to Into the Metaverse. I'm your host, Jin, and we've got an amazing panel of VR and Web3 developers. Starting on my right, at the very end, we're going to do a quick round of introductions, starting with Bai.
Hey, what's up? I'm James Bakwanu, also known as Bai. Independent VR developer. Been working on Genesis XR for what, 4 years, 5 years now, and kind of just working on things like software preservation with the Internet Archive, and just trying to figure out what's going on with all this, the VR and kind of upcoming new technology.
Cool. Avier.
Hey, I'm Avier. I'm a WebXR developer. Been around about as long as Bai has. Feels like, can't believe it's been 7 years so already. I make WebXR and crypto-based virtual worlds. And you might know me from some of my other projects like ExoKit, Webverse, and Metachromium, which is a WebXR browser that runs on top of things like VRChat, so you could do crypto transactions, and a lot of really cool stuff is in the pipeline. But yeah.
Nice. Polygon Mind.
Hey, what's up? My name is Daniel, also known as Doxon. I'm an artist that builds things in the metaverse with my company Polygon Mind. We create different virtual worlds, and recently we launched this new project called Crypto Avatars, where we are creating avatars and stuff. I've been around this metaverse for maybe 2 years or so when I joined into the crypto voxels and the Decentraland.
Very nice. Those are awesome projects. And then over here, we've got Count on Me, also known as
MetaDreamer. Yeah, I have like too many names. But yeah, hey guys, I'm Hamad. I'm one of the founders of MetaFactory. MetaFactory is sort of this project that's trying to bridge together, digital virtual goods with physical goods and sort of create the digiphysical metaverse, if you will, and combine it with like crypto stuff like DeFi and DAO, so we can all live in the cyberpunk future of our dreams.
Awesome. Thank you all for those introductions. Today, we're going to be discussing composability and what it means for the metaverse. So, panelists, what is the first thing that comes to mind when you hear virtual world composability? What does it mean? I guess we'll start off with Avier. What do you think?
The first thing that comes to mind for me is like pain, because what I see kind of in the industry is like we're so close to the metaverse, and like everybody has independently invented all of the pieces that we need. It's just what we're seeing is kind of a failure, or maybe a lack of motivation to bring everything kind of together to create like one of these grand visions that we see in all the sci-fi that we read, like Ready Player One or Ready Player Two, or Snow Crash. The ingredients are there, so like the first thing that comes to mind, like pain. So like, why can't we just have the metaverse? Why can't we all just like work together?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely my take on it as well. Is there's all these different projects that we're all very passionate about bringing, our own pieces of this puzzle, to the world and kind of get it out there. But I think there's so much to do, and that's I think the problem with VR in general is it's bigger than any one person or even one company can do. Like Facebook alone can't do all the things that you can do in VR. There's too much. It's like saying one company would do everything on the web. It just doesn't make sense. So I'd like to see us more build towards the idea of VR as just this platform for all kinds of experiences. Right now, we're mostly focusing, the companies driving it are mostly focusing on games, but kind of VR as a tool for visualizations, different types of applications. I feel like it's kind of it's being, I don't want to say neglected because people are working on those little pieces, but we're all working on them independently. And the platforms aren't really doing much to kind of allow us to build those things in a way where they all work together. I think the predominant kind of way of thinking about apps, even outside of VR, is everything's kind of a standalone black box. You launch this application, it does its things. Maybe it saves the file out that then you can load into something else, but there's no, with the web, the kind of where I come from is the idea of like you can build a bunch of these little pieces and people can pull these little pieces in. Maybe they just want this, control. They don't want all of Facebook on their page, but they can pull in like the Facebook comment section or things like that. And that's what the web enabled, was for people to build these small pieces that you could deliver up into larger web applications. But I feel like on the web, even that has been kind of on the decline the past few years. So that's my take on composability. Is I'd like to go back to I think the heyday of that on the web was like 2006 to 2010, when a lot of people working on things like open social and before Facebook really kind of took control of that whole ecosystem.
You mentioned file formats. So some of us here have been working with formats like VRM, which are kind of like at the forefront of interoperability, I would say. Like, for example, Polygonal Mind is probably like one of the leaders in this space, just releasing like 200 open source avatars, and then the Crypto Avatars project, all VRM based, and their stuff has worked with our tech stack like since day one, and it's absolutely amazing. So I'm also kind of like hopeful that the right direction is being followed by people, and like people are agreeing that we do need standards, and we should try to plug in our projects together rather than everybody kind of trying to reinvent the entire stack and trying to be the metaverse.
Yeah. I recently talked with someone about this. They want to implement crypto avatars, and they thought that they need some kind of documentation, easy documentation for them to kind of learn by experience how they can implement their stuff into their project, right? So they are telling me that crypto space is okay, it's open source, but there's no documentation, or there's not really many ways to kind of import a project into another without having to ask the team itself. And it should be that way, right? You could be just implementing my project into your project and not asking me for permission or asking me any confirmation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
What do you think it means to your users, this interoperability and standards like VRM? Like, what do they get out of it? How do they see it towards Polygonal Mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think people is like, oh, so this file, what this really does, right? And once you understand that VRM is a file that contains a 3D model, and then you have more stuff onto it, the only thing we did in crypto avatars is like visually showing the metadata that was stored inside of it. They start to see that there is more value into the files, because you can have a file that maybe has licenses, which is pretty awesome, right? If you create an avatar, you want people to be able to choose their own licenses, because not everybody is going to sell their avatar. And I think that's something that we haven't seen in the NFT space, right? Like choosing your own licenses right in the moment you create the file itself or tokenize it.
Interesting. So how much do you think composability matters? Like, what's at stake? Open question for the panelists.
I think it matters a lot. Sorry, go ahead.
My bad. Yeah, I was gonna say like I think composability is like kind of the key crux to it all. In terms of like we have all these pieces, they don't work together, and it really comes down to Moloch. Our inability to coordinate as a species as a whole, and just like in these sort of fields as well. We have you can kind of attribute a lot of the problems in society to, or pretty much all the problems in society to inability for humans to coordinate, whether it's like, COVID and we can't coordinate to get masks to get done with this, or, various things like where if we just coordinated, it would be better for everyone. But because we sort of optimize for our like local benefits first, we sort of sacrifice the better collective benefit of everyone. And I think, the key to getting to that state where we have interoperability is we need sort of that like substrate that can act as the common ground for everyone. And, I feel like that comes from like blockchain and, starting to like converge these worlds of VR and, these digital virtual worlds with the aspects of like true ownership, true scarcity, true verifiability that you get from blockchain. And only then can we sort of like coordinate in a way that like things that Facebook builds, or things that one company or one entity builds, can like trustlessly interoperate in other places without them having to directly coordinate. Because that's the hardest part, is like we can't actually get everyone to be in the same room and be all on the same page. We need to be able to coordinate and have things be interoperable, even when where there's like many different entities in different places that have different goals and things like that, regardless of that. So figuring out that common ground is the most important part. And I think once we get there, then people sort of realize the value of interoperability, where it's very much positive sum, right? The experience one developer builds in their game or their world becomes much more appealing when those experiences can sort of spill over into other worlds, and also spill over into real life. I think that's an interesting part of it too, where these things that you own in the digital world have real value, and you can exchange them, and it can have a impact on your real life as much as it does in these virtual worlds.
Good point.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always been this kind of contention between the people building platforms, hardware platforms in this case, the headsets really. But going back in time, we'll look at like the internet platforms and the PC versus kind of Mac and the other kind of computing systems that were around at the time, where you kind of have two kind of competing approaches, where you have the open approach, which IBM PC, anyone could kind of implement that. Anyone could build software on that. Anyone could build peripherals for it. Versus Mac, whereas like Apple controls what you build. You have to apply for a developer program. You have to pay a yearly fee. You have to go through an approval process, and that's kind of it always goes back and forth. It seems to me that in the long run, the open systems, if not win, they at least become embraced. Like Apple used to run, they made all their own, chips for the desktop computers, and then finally they like, all right, it's too much. We're gonna kind of switch over to the IBM PC essentially, and Mac OS became just a different operating system on an IBM PC that's just kind of rebranded in a nice shiny package. They're kind of going the other way now with mobile, where it's all locked down. They can kind of control the ecosystem from hardware all the way through to the software marketplace, and we see a lot of tension there. I mean, we see like Tim Sweeney, Epic versus Apple, about how much control they have over what people can build for their platform. And we see the same kind of thing with Facebook, where especially to a lot of the kind of early developers, got started with Oculus, kind of building these. We were all very excited to build for this new platform, and we were all very, there was a very open atmosphere amongst developers where we're all talking about what we're working on, and we're all kind of very supportive of these different projects that we're on. And it kind of like going to Oculus Connect over the years, it just kind of like you would go to these conferences and you look around and like, all right, whose day is going to be ruined today because now Facebook is announcing that we're doing a native version of VR desktop or big screen, and because they own the platform, they have an inherent advantage. To take the case of big screen, big screen, in order to offer up these videos on the Oculus platform, they have to pay 30. Wonderfully, they make all this money by doing it that way. So it's kind of like incentive wise, it's a hard problem to solve because it's like from the outside, we're looking at Facebook, we're looking at Apple, and we're saying, hey, this isn't fair. We would like to build these things for our users, for just people in general. We'd like to improve the state of kind of the VR ecosystem, or just build the apps we want to build for mobile.
So on that point, what do you think are the biggest challenges in doing that?
I guess monetization. I mean, it's none of us really like the idea of like, all right, we focus all our time on monetization, because that's, a lot of us are building, either whether we're artists or developers, we're interested in building the piece that we build, whatever that may be. And like, speaking for myself, I'm not a salesperson, but I still, like, now I have to spend so much of my time trying to convince people that, hey, you should pay me money to develop the thing that I do. And it's been a hard sell, because it's kind of like we're trying to convince people, hey, you should take a gamble on this, VR on my platform within VR, especially. And it's like, it's a hard sell. It's hard to get people to commit to putting money forward to those kind of things. But it's necessary, because these things, so many people working in the VR kind of space have been working as kind of like a labor of love. Hold on 1 second. Sorry, I just had to cough.
Would others agree that monetization is the biggest challenge for composability?
It's one of them, and I think it's one of the things that composability kind of enables. Like, the whole Facebook lockdown thing, and anybody else who's trying to basically play the Apple strategy. Like, the only reason that those models work is because they restrict the ways in which things can compose. They restrict the ways in which applications can be loaded onto a device. They restrict the ways in which you can accept payments. I mean, Epic is fighting that battle as well. They restrict the ways in which you can even behave in VR. Like, I mean, Facebook is now becoming notorious for banning people for using the Oculus Quest 2, and they didn't like the face that they presented on their ID. And so, like, all these things are being tied closer and closer together by these platforms, which is the opposite of composability to me. And what you have on the other hand is you have kind of like the freedom fighters, which I think, I don't know, maybe some of us here would say we're in that bucket. You have the freedom fighters who are trying to kind of like break these things up in a way where we can make money and we can find our niche in one of these platforms, in one of these value chains, and find a way for us to get paid, find a way for us to get users, and find a way for everybody to kind of get what they want. And instead, it feels like we have companies like Facebook, Apple, and pretty much all of the big tech companies trying to kind of create a vertical stack of them doing every single thing, and every single thing requires going through their permission model, whatever that is, where they ban you, or whether they just require you to submit a thing, submit a concept to them before you can even start developing the application, which is something that Facebook does once again. And so yeah, like there are a lot of challenges, and I think monetization would be one of the ways that we can kind of poke holes into the system, because once people can get paid to do some of these things, then a lot of the monopoly like starts to break away. Like you have people whose entire lives are dedicated, like their job is dedicated towards making things more and more compatible. And if we can allow that, if we can carve out like these little paths that don't necessarily go through one of these massive platforms, then we kind of stand a shot at having a true decentralized, open, composable metaverse.
I think
What
like
has surprised you in terms of virtual, like anything that's been developed recently or compatibility? Like, to give us a shot. Anything in particular? New
I got a
development?
couple of things. I'm constantly surprised how compatible VRM is, and pretty much anybody who's developing on VRM, like that stuff just automatically works. You have
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Well, I was just gonna say it's so standards. You mentioned that in your kind of intro to this. It's frustrating because I agree completely. Standards are kind of the way things move forward. But there's also this stigma around standards because people think of standards as this kind of like long drawn out process where companies basically argue about details and then they dictate to you that this is how you have to do it. If you want to do it, you do it this way. And that is one way that standards get made. But another way is just, hey, I made this file format. Whoever made VRM initially, I don't know the history of that. And they put it out there in a way that didn't discourage other people from building on it. And through that, like other people adopted it, more people adopted it, people started making other tools which output that. Anyone who is looking to kind of bring this type of avatar into their application is like, oh, I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I can just go use this. And so it kind of became a standard just because it was useful to people. It was there. It was well documented, and you didn't have to go through a gatekeeper in order to implement it. Versus something like W3C standards are like there's a lot of gatekeeping involved in creating those standards. You have to be a member of the W3C in order to participate, and that costs money. So it's standards are double-edged sword because especially in a field where it's so cutting edge, people hear standards and they're like, screw that. Well, I'm gonna do my own thing. I'm gonna figure it out because this is cutting edge stuff and no one can tell me the right way to do it because it hasn't been figured out. And so you kind of see that, like you see people kind of, you get these de facto standards, like retroactive standards almost. And that's. I
think people are FOMOing at how cool some of them are. Like ERM, for example, you show how interoperable of a standard it is, like for media and like culture and promotion.
Mm-hmm.
And that changes people's mind, and they hop over to that cool train.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of other things that surprised me. One of them is the whole crypto art scene. I think that surprised a lot of other people. That like one of the main usages of crypto turned out to be just enabling artists to actually have a financial relationship with collectors and just fan their work. So that was like
a direct
surprise to me, and I think it's a really powerful force right now in the whole industry. And another thing that kind of like surprises me is how few people are taking advantage of that. One of my first comments that I made at our virtual market trip is like, why can't I just like grab this thing and put it into my inventory, like, and like have it on some sort of blockchain, like so I can actually own these things. And to this day, like despite how awesome like VR chat is, like I just can't do that. So I just like wish people would take a lot of these concepts more seriously.
Yeah, I think it's a really like double-edged sword with these platforms and this control and composability and interoperability. I think in terms of like why these platforms have succeeded and have gained adoption, like the gatekeeping and sort of restriction of content is one aspect, but I think the real like thing that actually drove it is like the user experience, right? And when you have sort of like a lack of standards and no way to like coordinate, the user experience suffers. And these platforms sort of act as like a forcing function where it's almost like a dictator type thing, but it still gets you to that state where you have this like walled garden ecosystem where within these walled gardens things work really nicely. And I think that's really what drove that sort of adoption. And I don't think it's bad for this space because it can start off with these like closed off platforms, but eventually like once people start to get normalized to these things, the interoperable way is going to be the way forward. And that's kind of what you see in Web3 is like in the traditional sort of tech space, like competing was the meta. If you wanted to win, you had to compete, you had to crush, you had to beat everyone else. And in Web3, it's kind of changing. In Web3, the platforms that try to compete and crush other platforms actually don't do that well. The platforms that do the best are the ones that build the most bridges and sort of create the most interoperability with other things, and it sort of creates this like fabric or mesh of projects and communities, and that actually they end up actually succeeding. So there's something about the whole Web3 and blockchain paradigm, whether it's the transparency of these things, the fact that you have this trustless paradigm, but it's the first time where collaborating is a better business strategy than competing. And I think that sort of key thing is what will drive things forward, because up until now you have to compete, and competition is like just directly contradictory towards interoperability and standardization and things. So and it goes hand in hand with monetization too, right? You see it with crypto art. Artists now, like before it was like as an artists wanted to like create and be creative and do these things, but they always had to do like things that they didn't really want to do that weren't really fun for them just to pay the bills. Like filmmakers would have to do wedding videography just because that's what paid the bills. And NFT art really showed that artists can be doing what they want to be doing and still have like financial stability out of it and sustainability out of it. And I think it's going to be the same thing with these virtual worlds where you have sort of this, monetization doesn't become like a point of friction or become like a thing that's like pushing against what you want to do. It becomes something more in line and parallel with the platform and can sort of grow and scale and align the incentives for the users and the platform, where like right now if I buy a skin in Fortnite, that money just goes straight to Epic. I don't get anything out of it. If I if I was like one of the first players of Fortnite and spent like hundreds or thousands of hours playing it, like I really didn't get any upside to the success of Fortnite. But once we can sort of use Web3 and Ethereum to sort of decentralize the ownership of these platforms, give the users sort of the upside, or given the potential to grow with the platform, you grow with your users. That's like the most powerful thing. And with MetaFactory, that's what we did recently. Is we sort of.
Oops.
Did we lose him?
Oops.
Yeah. Well, while we're waiting for it to come back, yeah, I totally agree with his point about kind of the big platforms and kind of like again that dichotomy between the open and closed. I'm pretty outspoken against Facebook. I'm not a big fan of them as a company, as a platform. But at the same time, there's no denying that they're positive overall VR. They've put literally billions of dollars towards making these products, getting them out there, and it's again going back to like the 90s of the people getting on the internet. There was like the AOL versus the internet. So many people got onto the internet first via AOL. Again, AOL spent millions of dollars promoting the idea, getting people like people didn't know what to do with the internet until AOL came along. And I mean, people were figuring it out, but AOL kind of explained it to your average user, your kind of, moms and pops, needing to buy something for their kids kind of thing. Like, oh, okay, they can use it to do their homework, or they can do, chat with their aunts and uncles on the other side of the country, things like that. So they kind of they put so much money into kind of convincing people to use it, and it was like a gateway, because you get on AOL and you're like, oh, okay, this is cool, a nice polished experience, everything's put together. But what's this other stuff over here? What's this stuff that isn't on the platform? I know they had this door to the wider internet, and that was like this Wild West over there. You had IRC, you had FTPs, you had all these these things that would never fly within the gated community, the walled garden. But because you started off in the walled garden, it kind of piqued your interest to what else was out there. So I think that we're going to see the same thing with Horizon. Looks like a very capable platform, but the very nature of Facebook as a platform, and we're seeing this not just in their VR stuff. This is now a worldwide thing, where because they're such a large platform, because they've been so successful, they now have a responsibility to police their content, to kind of control what's on their platform. And so you can't fault them for it necessarily, because you see all these kind of big things blowing up in the news that Facebook allowed this, and it's like, well, Facebook as a neutral platform, you could send messages to your friends about whatever you want, but it gets into kind of a gray area because they're not a neutral platform. Their job is to filter things, promote things, and so it gets into this kind of weird gray area of, are they a publisher or are they just a platform?
It also kind of pleasantly surprised me that there is this backlash and that people are kind of aware of it. I think the whole Oculus thing with the accounts, when that was announced, it was pretty much a universal backlash. Anybody who actually understood the issue is what is this? This shouldn't be allowed. And now regulators are taking notice. So I'm partly surprised by that, but also part hopeful.
We have to pause.
If this...
So one of our panelists can get back in. So we're gonna make a new instance here real quick, and then finish the panel. Got one more question for y'all. So follow me through this portal.
Okay.
Yeah, you drop.
Do it.
The Cyber Frog got a good recording. We don't need to use all of it. I just think it'd be interesting that we got that 3D 180 anyway. So no worries on that. Yeah, $10.
Me and my big head.
Head for a big brain. Can you invite the guy that you kicked? Invite him.
I like that. You got the directors conferring over there. We can't tell what they're going to tell us to do next.
Yeah, right.
Damn it.
It'd be like a candid camera thing. Sorry, go ahead.
There he is. All right, cool. Hey.
Oh, there he is.
What happened? All right, sorry about that.
It's always technical issues.
Yeah, we just had some random people come in. It wasn't disruptive. They were being polite. But anyway. Okay, everybody, and now give me the just send me a Discord message that when you're ready, Boombox. All right, ready to go. All right, 3, 2, 1. Hey, and we are back. So panelists, I have a question. What do you think? What do you wish more people or developers would do to increase compatibility, composability between virtual worlds? And we'll start off with MetaDreamer.
I think like it's tricky because like I see the same problems happening in a lot of different places that don't have anything to do with virtual worlds. And it's really hard just to get people in the same room to sort of think together and work together in that way. And it's right now it's like super early as well, so I feel like a lot of people are just sort of exploring and stuff. But I think if it sort of needs to be like a concerted push towards making interoperability like a first class concern, and realizing that the platforms that all of us are building aren't going to matter if they don't work with each other, and not so much think of it as like a problem for later, but starting to like use the best of what we have now, and push that forward. And it's all sort of like a cultural shift change that needs to happen, I guess. And yeah, it's a lot of it too is just like a lack of education about what things there are available and how things can be done. So hopefully like even things like this panel can do more to sort of make people realize the importance of it. Yeah, I don't know too much in terms of technical terms what we can do because I'm not so much in the VR side, but that's how I can see from like a cultural.
It goes beyond.
Yeah,
it goes beyond VR. Very good point. Yeah, talk, Sam.
I guess what we can do is talk with each other, right? That's the first step we have to take. Also, if I make things, we try to think about the projects into the future, not into the short term. Because if you think into the short term, you are going to always think about yourself and how you can sustain yourself. But you have to think the projects in in a long term, and act in the short term. And if we picture this metaverse scene in 10 years from now, we will see that there's going to be more Facebook. There's going to be also more headsets. Oculus Quest. I don't believe in 10 years we don't have secondary 3 or 5 different kind of headsets where we can choose to use, and they kind of work between each other's, and try to do the same thing as the BRM consortium is doing, right? The BRM consortium is a group of Japanese companies that they decided they want to help the development of VR and speed it up, and that's why the BRM exists, right? And so we need to kind of do the same thing, try to connect with each other and try to talk, or try to think what we want to the future, but not in the short term, but in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good point that there's a lot of discussion around composability and all that happens with developers, but that's one of the things about VR especially is that it's bigger than just like, with websites, you're like, all right, we're building a website, there's this technical backend stuff and all that, and you involve designers a little bit, but it's like so much of it is technical. Versus VR it's like it encompasses so many different expertise, fields of expertise And so I think that I'd love to see more people engaging. I think the crypto community has done awesome of engaging artists and getting them into the whole space. But if we look at like when we're building these virtual worlds, there's a lot of technical stuff, and I think that's the difficulty involved on the technical side is part of why a lot of these platforms haven't collaborated as well as they could have. Because it's like someone comes along and they're like, "Hey, I've got a project. It's similar to your project. Let's figure out how we can make them work together." And they're like, "That's a great idea, but I have like 500 bugs that I'm working on. We'll get to that later," kind of thing. And like you say, it's something that we should be looking early on how we can do that. But because of those short-term considerations of, hey, I got to get my stuff working so that I can make some money and actually pay bills using it versus it being, a project of passion type of thing. That often leads us to kind of pass on the interoperability thing. But even beyond just the technical thing, like when you're building a VR space like this, I mean, this is nice because this is already, this is a scan of a place that this church was probably built like 100 plus years ago, and has gone, it was a church for a while, then it, was abandoned for a while, and then it, the Internet Archive moved in and kind of transformed things. But you look around this space and there's the touch of of physical world designers have been all over this place. Everything here, like back in the back of the room, there's these alcoves that were originally designed to showcase religious icon type things, or we don't call them icons, but statues of religious figures. Now they hold servers because that's what the Internet Archive worships, so to speak. But even like if you're building a new space from scratch, there's almost more in common with like interior designers and physical space designers than there is with programmers. So like being able to like I've been working with 5R's video online video festival, kind of designing this space for kind of facilitating people to come and meet up and view these 360 VR videos with each other. And it's like so much of what we do there is like, oh well, we need to put this information sign somewhere. Like we need to basically look at the principles of interior design and say, okay, if someone's walking into this space, what do they see? How do we design this space to encourage you to do the actions that we want you to do, which is talk with each other, watch a video, go join this like a panel that might be going on. And so again, like talking about collaboration, I'd love to see more non-technical people show interest in building these virtual worlds, because there is there's so much that I think up until now kind of developers and technical people have been like trying to take on themselves, and it never really works well. Like I know Janice, one of the problems is everything is like programmer art. You have a few worlds where some really talented people have gone through and put a lot of effort into the art of the world, but so much of it is lacking that, and so it becomes this kind of like self-reinforcing problem where people look at the platform, they say, that doesn't look great. It looks like a programmer made that, and that's exactly what it is. So encouraging that type of cross-disciplinary collaboration, I think benefits everyone.
Yeah, I think too, in more practical terms, for what these different like technologies and platforms can do to sort of build bridges is like, think of it as like, you have like, these are all nodes, and you have like input and output, like ports into these nodes. So like on their sort of like public messaging or their website or something, making it like front and center, like, hey, if you want to integrate my stuff, here's how you can do it and how I want you to use my stuff. If you want me to integrate my stuff into yours, or you want me to use your stuff, like here's how you can do that, or here's what I'm interested in doing, and sort of creating those like that messaging or those like putting out that olive branch essentially to sort of say that, you know, without someone having to like know about the other person or having a direct connection with the other person, like increase the chances that someone's going to read that, come up with an idea, you know, and have like sort of guidance on how to do it. You know, whereas a lot of the time when I go to a lot of these pages of these technologies and things, it's sort of they're trying to sell themselves and talk about how awesome they are, rather than sort of trying to focus on how they can work with others. Because if everyone's just trying to sell themselves, then no one's listening to anyone else, and we're not going to get to the point of like interoperability and being able to build these bridges unless we're all listening to each other. So we kind of have to like be the change you want to see, and you know, go out of our way to create these opportunities that other people can you know, integrate our stuff, and then we offer to integrate our stuff into other places. You know, because we're all experts in our own domains, so it's hard to sort of expect other people to know how to integrate our stuff. We kind of have to look into other places, find these opportunities, and then be proactive. And I think that's sort of like the cultural shift that needs to happen. And you know, like you said, it's like if it's a lot of programmers who are sort of like enthusiastic about, you know, what they're building, but it might not have like the sort of like product building, like how to get this to market, how to like the strategical aspects of these things. It doesn't really like move forward in the same way. Whereas someone like Facebook, they have all of it. You know, they have the programmers, they have the marketers, they have the strategists, they have, you know, people dedicated to monetization, and they can sort of put all these different pieces together. So I think like, you know, there needs to be incentives for those type of people to come into these things, and sort of create these bridges. And you know, we're hoping we can sort of do that thing with MetaFactory, because you know, in MetaFactory we want to create this like platform that's owned by all its users and attract both, you know, crypto people, VR people, artists, developers, you know, product strategists, like, and you know, we're doing this in a public sphere, right? We have a public governance forum. Anyone can propose an idea, you know, for where we should take this. So it becomes a much more like an open sort of town hall or bazaar where, you know, it's a gathering space. We come and sort of figure things out. And once we sort of embed these sort of things and we get more people interested, then I think it can happen. Like with crypto art, you can see there's people who are into crypto now are suddenly into art, or artists are now suddenly into crypto. And you know, you get into crypto, then there's so many other rabbit holes to go into. You know, you start learning so much about economics and finance and things that you don't even expect to be learning. For MetaFactory, like we want to do it so like someone might come just for the cool shirt, like, or that jacket. You know, I want to buy that jacket. So they pay with their credit card, they buy the jacket, they get the package, and they find out, oh, there's a chip embedded inside this jacket. I can scan it and then get access to this NFT. What's an NFT? Then they go down the NFT rabbit hole. You know, oh, I can put this on in VR chat in these virtual worlds. That's cool. So then they go down that rabbit hole. They realize that they can trade these things, and there's all these DeFi's, and they realize, oh, I actually have voting power on the platform that I bought from. So now I was a consumer, but now I'm also like an owner of the platform. And then they go down that rabbit hole, and then that sort of creates these like channels of virality where they'll do this, and then them doing it, other people will see them doing it, and then also come in, they'll tell others about it. And you know, once we sort of create these sort of channels and bridges, then it can start to snowball and coalesce into something a lot more meaningful.
Like one really practical answer to the question of how do we build bridges is I just think a lot more people should look in.
Get you in the frame.
Boombox is in the way.
He is?
Yeah, like I can't sit down.
Chair looks empty to me.
Yeah, it looks empty to me.
Oh, I see Boombox here.
That's
I could just like stand here, but I can't sit down.
That's interesting.
Just AFK right there.
Glitch in the metaverse.
It's okay. Yeah, I was just gonna say like one practical piece of advice for building bridges is if like you're a crypto skeptic because like you think it's all about like Bitcoin people trying to go to the moon or something, that's totally not what it's about. I think like, well, at least some of us here are like into the crypto scene, and none of us are in for that reason. We're in it because it enables interoperability, it enables compatibility, and it aligns incentives between all these different projects. So like just one piece of advice would be like really look into crypto, look into NFTs, look into some of the projects by the people that are here, whether it's Webaverse, whether it's crypto avatars, whether it's MetaFactory, whether it's even Janus XR. If you just look into these projects and like take a different lens at the whole crypto aspect of it, you might realize that there's a lot of value there, and I think a lot of people are really building awesome bridges just using these technologies.
Yeah, I think one of the frustrating parts about both VR and blockchain technology is that both of them kind of attracted in the early days people who were very much looking to make a quick buck. The opportunistic kind of people who are like, oh, this is a hot, trendy new thing. I'm going to jump in and just kind of, throw a bunch of money at it and pull a bunch of money out kind of thing. And I think all the people here are looking beyond that. And I think that did give both VR and crypto a bad name. For me, crypto is about, it's the age-old dream of micropayments. And there's been kind of, Bitcoin was supposed to be the savior for that, and then it got too expensive. Ethereum as well, like
it's supposed to be the savior of that, and then it got expensive.
Yeah, exactly. So there's this trade-off of like you want to be able to enable people to spend small amounts of money in order to get small things. Like if it's one thing to set up a business where you charge someone, a $10.99, $39.99, whatever per month. That's easy. That's kind of like a solved problem. You can get them on PayPal. You can get them on Venmo. All these different kind of platforms exist for that. But if you're selling something that's like 25 cents or, a buck, the kind of merchant fees and the kind of transaction fees involved with that make it more difficult. And I think that's always been the dream for crypto is the like for platforms like Janus or like High Fidelity was definitely looking into this. Being able to do these transactions for small things that just kind of a lot of the just kind of the because of all the kind of hype around the technologies, they kind of well, now we can't use that one because it's too expensive. So I think that's kind of stabilized a lot in the past couple of years. But that's from my perspective, that's kind of the dream of it is microtransactions. Yeah.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, another practical piece of advice is like you're not in tons of awesome discords. I think many of us just like have our own discords. But if you're not in these discords, like you're really missing out. I'm known for saying that like Discord is probably the most metaversey, most composable platform out there, despite the fact that it has no XR aspect. It's not really about art at all. It's more about gaming than anything. But all of these Discord servers are linked together by common ideas, by common people, and sometimes even by common technology, where you have people like Jin who are setting up matrix bots between different virtual worlds, between different Discords. And then you have bots that actually scheduled this meeting for us and reminded us to be here. If you're not on Discord in like a lot of these awesome servers, yeah, you're also missing out. That's another practical way that we can build bridges.
It's really fascinating how much of a phenomenon Discord has become. It's like it's become so much bigger than what it was originally intended for.
Are gaming and working in Discord, and it's like got a persistent ID where you can tap games and screen sharing. Metaverse. Oh, I think that
and
wraps
hopefully
it up, for composability. It's been about an hour, and we got a lot of great discussion going on as to how and what composability is, why it matters, what we can do to increase it, what's at stake. I'd like to thank all the panelists for their time. and we'll see what we create at the Untitled NFT hack when these groups converge even more between the XR and the NFT community. So, yeah, thanks again. Episode 1 of
Cool.
Thanks,
Into the
Jin.
Metaverse.
Yeah, thanks for putting this together.
Thanks. Yeah.